In the first shots, we see the children being asked by their teacher to tell who their hero is. Ronnie wrote on the blackboard with chalk that his hero was Hachi, his grandfather's dog. The children started laughing at their classmate, but Ronnie decided to tell his story anyway. Once a monk from Japan found a small abandoned puppy, put a collar on him and sent him to America. However, on the platform next to the train station, the cage fell out of the luggage, and the puppy ended up on the street among the people. He was spotted by Professor Parker Wilson. He approached Carl, the station attendant, because someone would surely come to get the pet, but Carl refused to leave the puppy here. Besides, it is Friday night. Parker had no choice but to take the puppy with him. The professor came home and put the puppy on the padded couch. Parker was greeted by his beloved wife Kate, who took a bottle of wine and led her husband to the second floor. Meanwhile, the puppy began to explore the room and was able to open the door. The pet climbed up the stairs and into the couple's bedroom. When someone licked Kate's leg, she was frightened and screamed. Kate was very unhappy because the husband hadn't even consulted her, and she had never wanted a pet. Parker promised that he would find a puppy's owner tomorrow, and the pet would spend tonight in the garage. Parker put some warm bedding on the floor, put a bowl of water, and left himself. The next morning Kate was photographing her daughter Andy with the puppy. The girl really likes the pet and thinks they should keep him, since the house has been deserted since Luke's passing. Parker doesn't mind keeping the puppy, but Kate is adamant. Parker had to go to the animal shelter, but he learned from an employee that due to a shortage of places each animal is given 2 weeks. Not daring to leave the puppy here, Parker turned to his friend Mary, who works in a bookstore, for help. He put up a notice on the window. Cat Antonio was not happy with the guest. Parker put up notices all over the neighborhood, asked people if anyone had lost the dog, and then returned to the station to Carl, but the puppy owner was still missing. He had to take the pet with him to work. Parker was leading a rehearsal at the ballet studio. Later his friend Ken explained to him that the dog had probably been brought from Japan. His collar bears the character Hachi, which means 8. It's a lucky number. Ken believes that Parker didn't find the puppy by accident, it is fate. At home, Kate realized that Parker wanted to keep the puppy, and besides he had given it a name. That same day, Hachi trashed Kate's cabinet, and she told her husband to take the pet outside. All evening Kate was indignant, because 2 months of work had been wasted because of the dog. During the night a hurricane began, and Parker returned to the barn to get Hachi, to move him into the house. During the night, Parker learned from the internet that Hachi is a member of the ancient Akita Inu dog breed. Parker left the puppy in his cabinet, but he didn't want to be alone and started barking. So Parker turned on the TV and decided to sit with his new friend. Not finding her husband in bed at night, Kate came downstairs and found him asleep on the couch with Hachi. Parker promised that he would soon find the puppy a good family. The next day he played with Hachi near the house and tried to train him. Andy told her mother that she was being too hard on Dad, because he only wanted to do a good deed. Kate got a call from people who were willing to take the puppy for themselves. But looking at her happy husband out the window, Kate lied that the puppy had already been taken. Summer has come, Hachi has already grown. He was always sad when his owner left for work, and so one day he dug a hole under the fence. After buying breakfast, Parker habitually took the train, seeing Hachi outside at the last moment. He tried to gesture for the dog to run home, but Hachi wouldn't do it. Parker told Carl that he wouldn't take the train because he didn't want to hold anyone up. The professor returned home and buried the hole, then hurried to work. During the day Hachi watched Kate work in the garden, then she gave him treats. Hachi became a member of the family. After rehearsal, Parker was on his way home. Hearing the train, Hachi jumped the fence and ran to the station. Almost all the people here know Hachi, who quietly sat down on the brick elevation. Seeing his faithful friend, Parker was very surprised, as were all the people around his. Meanwhile, Andy and her boyfriend Michael came over to her family's house for dinner. Parker was barbecuing and Michael was talking about how much he loves Andy. The family spent the whole evening together. Michael was surprised to learn that Hachi does not play ball. Parker attended a fencing lesson with Ken. Later he explained to his friend that Akita Inu dogs do not run after the ball. If Hachi brings the ball, he will have a special reason for it. In the morning, Hachi went to see his beloved owner off to work again. Passers-by were very surprised at how well-mannered and intelligent the dog was. The professor took the train, and Hachi returned home. In the evening he was faithfully waiting for Parker in the same place. This was repeated day after day, each time Hachi waited for Parker in the same place. Soon Andy and Michael were married. Hatchie attending the wedding as a full member of the family. In the winter, Parker liked to take his faithful friend for a walk. One day Parker didn't find the dog in his usual spot and became worried. Kate didn't see the pet anywhere either. Parker looked everywhere for Hatchie and found him in the garage. The dog was barking at a skunk. Parker tried to chase the animal away, but in vain. Then the professor covered the intruder with a box. As a result, he and Hatchie became victims of his smell. In the evening, Kate caught Parker and the pet in the bath. One day Andy told her mother that she was pregnant. Kate was happy. When Andy ran outside to tell her father the wonderful news, she saw him giving his doggy a massage. Hearing that he was going to be a grandfather, Parker was very excited. Kate couldn't believe that she and Parker had already been happily married for 15 years. Andy really wants the same fate for herself too. Hatchie invariably meets Parker from work every day. One day, returning home late, Kate was surprised to see candles and rose petals in the bathroom. The husband had prepared a surprise for her. They fell asleep in each other's arms, just as they had when they were young. This morning Parker as usual got ready to go to work. Hatchie, however, was in the mood to play. At first Parker didn't understand what was wrong, but then Hatchie took the toy in his teeth and caught up with him at the station. Hatchie ran after the ball and brought it back to Parker, who couldn't believe it. Hatchie wanted to keep playing, but it was time for Parker to go. The dog watched the train leave. During a class with students, Parker held his pet's ball in his hands. Suddenly he felt sick and had trouble breathing. In front of the terrified students, Parker collapsed and had a heart attack. It was 5 p.m., and the owner was still gone, but Hatchie kept waiting. Even when night fell, he stayed where he was. Soon Michael came to pick him up and took him home. From the garage, Hatchie could hear Kate and Andy crying bitterly. In the morning, the girl went to her father's beloved pet. She can't believe he passed away. Today is the day of the funeral. All the family and friends came to say goodbye to Parker, whom everyone thought was a very good man. Ken read the farewell speech. At 5 o'clock in the evening Hatchie came to the station again, but his owner was not among the people. Late that night Carl sat down next to the dog and said that Parker was not coming back, so there was no need to wait for him. Kate was about to move out. Andy and Michael decided to take Hatchie with them. By this time they had already had a son, Ronnie. Kate took one last walk through the rooms of the house where she and her husband had lived happily for many years. At the new house, Hatchie lay there all day long, unresponsive to anything. One day he escaped through the open door. Michael rushed after him, but Hatchie managed to find his way to the railroad tracks and fell asleep under the wagon. In the morning the dog found his former home, and from there he reached the station. People never ceased to be amazed at his loyalty. The owner of the kiosk Jasjit treated him to a hot dog. Andy and Michael came to pick up the pet. Hatchie didn't want to leave, but they took him to the car anyway. For days the dog continued to lie down and refused to eat. When Hatchie heard the train approaching, Andy understood everything. She loves Hatchie very much and wants him to stay with them, but she can't keep him here. Andy opened the gate, and Hatchie immediately ran to the station. Of course Parker did not come. Kind people fed Hatchie, and the dog spent the night under the train carriage. Day after day, everything repeated itself. One day a reporter became interested in the story. Carl lied that he had found Hatchie many years ago and handed him over to the professor. Teddy asked permission to take a picture. Ken read an article about Hatchie in the newspaper. Caring people began to give Carl funds to buy food for Hatchie, but Carl kept all the money for himself. Ken came to visit Hatchie. Jasjit kept feeding the dog. Ken wanted to give him money for Hatchie, but Jasjit assured him that all the passers-by cared for Hatchie. He became like a native to them. It's been a year since Parker passed away. Ken misses him very much too. In the evening, when everyone had dispersed, Jasjit fed Hatchie again. So year after year passed, and Hatchie continued to wait faithfully for Parker. One day Kate got off the train. She came to their old house, where the new tenants were already living, and then she visited Parker's grave. Ken came too. It had been 10 years since Parker had been gone. Even so, the old Hatchie came to the subway station every day at 5 o'clock in the evening. Kate was shocked when she saw the dog in that very spot. She walked up to him, not believing her eyes. Hatchie is still waiting. Kate hugged him and cried. They waited for the next train together. Looking at this, Jasjit could not hold back tears either. In the evening Grandma showed Ronnie pictures with Hatchie. Kate believes that it was not Parker who found Hatchie, but Hatchie who found him. It was snowing in the evening. Hatchie lay down on the same spot. He remembered his beloved owner. For a moment he thought he saw Parker come out of the train station door. Hachi ran toward him. In the present, Ronnie finished telling his story. None of his classmates were laughing anymore. Hachi had taught him the value of loyalty and to never forget those you love. Ronnie also got a puppy and named it Hachi. Next, the voiceover tells us about a real dog named Hachi, who was born in Japan in 1920. After his master passed away, he waited for him at the station for 9 years.